Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. I know it's been a very long time since the last episode. I am very sorry. I've been very busy with my internship. I had to write a report that was taking up a lot of my free time, and uni started again, so I've been very busy and haven't had a lot of time to play Kerbal Space Program, let alone edit any episodes. But I have managed to play a little bit, and as you can see, the fleet of the Hades has finally arrived at Eve. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Starting with Scoutbug, which is bashing into all of the rocks on its way down this purple mountainside. So the goal of this little rover is to, well, scout out all the suitable locations for the rest of our hardware that we want to send down to the surface, namely the Asphodel base. We've also got the Heracles launch vehicle, as well as some of the transport vehicles that our astronauts are going to be getting around in. And as you can see, I was having an absolutely terrible time driving this thing around. It was just slipping and sliding all over the place, and I think the controls are backwards, so I kept turning the wrong way. Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, and I've been meaning to turn off parallaxes at collisions, because a lot of the small rocks do really just get in the way and are quite hard to drive around, and especially at the bottom there, you might not be able to quite see it just yet, but when we get down to that flatter surface, I have to restart the game just so I can, turn off the collisions and actually drive this thing. But eventually I do make it down this mountainside, because obviously this steep slope is not suitable for landing anything at all on, especially a massive, tall launch vehicle that is imperative for getting our astronauts back into space. Unfortunately, as we fixed the problem of the collisions on parallax, I ran into a bigger problem with a different mod. So the idea was that I was going to use the Bon Voyage mod to basically send this rover off so I didn't have to manually drive it sometimes tens of kilometers, because that would take a really long time and be very boring. You can see I'm just making some waypoints here just so I can, on the map, see where I want to start dropping things from orbit. But yes, anyway, so I was going to send Scoutbug around using the Bon Voyage mod. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if there's a problem with the mod not registering the RTGs, or whether the RTGs just aren't producing enough power, but as you can see here, it says power production is too low, and so I can't actually send this thing off with Bon Voyage, which is very annoying, and I thought I don't really want to drive this by hand, because that would take hours and hours, and I don't really have hours and hours of free time to be, driving across this barren landscape, so I had to make a bit of a decision. There is another rover, the Hypnos rover, but that requires astronauts to be inside of it. Not because it doesn't have probe control, but because it's part of the drop assembly that the astronauts will be heading to the surface in. So we're going to chalk this up to rover failure, and we're going to have to move ahead with our plan to put astronauts on the surface quicker than we anticipated. But before we can get the astronauts down, we need to send down the infrastructure to make sure that they won't die when they get here. First, we'll send down Asphodel, which is the base, so they've got somewhere to sleep, and that also has all of that important life support, so they won't starve or dehydrate to death on the surface of Eve. And then we'll send down Heracles, which is very important because we want to know that we can get our astronauts off the surface. So once both of those are down, then and only then will we send down the astronauts, and from there they can scout out the locations of all the other bits we want to send down. So here we are with step 1 of that plan with Asphodel. You can see I'm just trying to tweak its descent so I can get it as close to that marker as possible. It's quite difficult to aim properly with the atmosphere of Eve, because it slows you down a lot more than the trajectories mod thinks it's going to slow you down, but I think we get fairly close, so why don't we just watch the re-entry. Unfortunately, I have to cut the cinematic a little short there because this became a bit of a game of parachute management. See, I basically just spammed a bunch of parachutes all over this, not really knowing how it was going to fall through the atmosphere. You can see I've already ditched one of the heat shields, but I didn't want to ditch the one on the bottom there because they have incredibly high drag, which means it would probably fly straight back into the base and destroy the thing in midair, which I didn't really want to have happen. Also, because of its high drag, it is slowing us down very quickly, actually. Which is good because it gave me a bit more time to think about what to do. As you can see, it's kind of nose diving towards the ground there. We need this thing to be horizontal, ideally, so that the kerbals don't fall out of their bed. I was messing around with the parachute settings to make some of them deploy a lot higher. This way I could extend the air time of this thing, and that gave me more time to think about which chutes I need to cut to keep the thing horizontal. As the first set of them deploy, you can see we are pretty horizontal already. And there's us ditching the re-entry frame there. But yeah, this thing has got loads of parachutes, so we've got plenty to choose from to cut to keep this thing horizontal. In fact, we have way more than we need on account of Eve's thick atmosphere, but that was kind of by, design, because I knew I would eventually have to cut some parachutes. Yeah, you can see the rest of them deploying there actually puts us on more of a tilt. So I'm going through cutting the ones that we don't need to keep the thing horizontal, so we actually land the correct orientation. But yeah, now we're just cruising gently down towards the ground at a nice sedate 6 meters per second. Which should hopefully keep all of this sensitive technology intact. We actually do have a nuclear reactor on the bottom of this thing, so we don't really want to hit the ground too hard, lest we irradiate the surface of Eve, which I don't think would make it very habitable. I mean, not that it's habitable anyway, but, we don't want to be making it any worse. And there we are, Asphodel is now safely on the ground of Eve, ready to host some kerbals. So next we're going to send Heracles down to make sure they've got a ride back, and then the kerbals will be sent down. I'm really excited about this, actually, because we made all these plans in episode 13, or at least that's when it all started. That's when we decided we were going to send astronauts to the surface of Eve, and it's just kind of exciting now that it's actually happening, and we're about to have some boots on the purple planet. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we need to put Heracles down so that we have a way off of the unforgiving surface of Eve. Here I am just making the deorbit burn. I found in practice that aiming around 10 degrees ahead of the orbit was best. The trajectories mod, like I said earlier, doesn't quite give an accurate landing just because Eve's atmosphere is very thick and does slow you down quite a lot. It still doesn't get us exactly on target, but we'll cover that a bit later. For now, you can see I'm just turning radially to detach the drive stage. I'm doing this because if I did it either prograde or retrograde, it would give us enough velocity to completely, throw our target out of whack. So I wanted to get as close to the landing site as possible. But as we get this gorgeous sunrise, why don't we take a moment to appreciate the visual mods of the game. I'll tell you what, that Firefly mod is really improving the game. I just love watching the drive stage disintegrate above us there, and we've got all the re-entry effects trailing behind it. It looks so cool. But yes, anyway, now we are on to the difficult part of this re-entry, which was ditching the heat shields. Yes, you can see that there was a bit of a messy way to detach them, but luckily nothing important broke away. I've got these vector engines on the side here just to slow our descent enough. I found in some simulations that we'd fall a little too fast for the parachutes and they would rip off, and obviously that's not good because that is the only thing that's going to get us onto the ground safely. So yeah, they're just there to slow us down a little bit more so we can deploy the parachute safely. Now, I kind of missed my target a little bit. I really was aiming for the peaks there because they're over 4,000 meters above sea level, which is what we need. We really want to be as far above the thick atmosphere as we can be, so we don't have to spend any of our precious fuel fighting it. We're still landing somewhere decently above sea level, but as I look down, I start to think, oh, that ground looks pretty steep. I really hope we can land upright. And that concern turned into a bit more panic. I can see the more stony textures there, usually indicative of very steep terrain, and I can see around us very, high inclination mountainsides, and I start getting very worried. I'm like, oh no, is this it? Because I'd quick saved in the atmosphere, which is a very silly thing to do. I don't know why, but anyway, so I was like, I hope we have somewhere decent to land, because this is it. We're kind of locked into this landing spot now. And all I could really do is sit back and watch, and it was really drawn out because things in Eve's atmosphere fall very slowly with parachutes because the atmosphere is so thick. But yeah, as we come down, it's the moment of truth, and I've got all of my fingers crossed, and I'm praying, please stand up, please don't fall over. And we touch down on the ground, and yes, we keep it upright. Luckily, it doesn't tip over. We are facing slightly southwest, which is not ideal for, obviously, we want to launch in an easterly orbit. So it means as soon as we launch this thing, we're going to have to pitch upright to make sure we don't waste any time going in the wrong direction, because we really do not have that much fuel to play with. But there we are, Heracles is down on the surface in definitely my first attempt. Yes, definitely my first attempt. Anyway, with that, it's time to turn our attention to the actual Hades ship so we can get our crew onto the dropship and onto Eve's surface. So we turn our attention to Karen, which is our orbital maneuvering system, as well as the dropship there, which is the big, bulbous looking item. So this is now going to rendezvous with Hades, so I'm just time warping round to my maneuver to get us, get our orbits intersecting, I should say. Which doesn't go very well. You can see I haven't got loads of fuel in the drive stage, which has the main thruster-weight ratio that we want for this whole setup because it's quite heavy. Karen itself, the orbital maneuvering system, does have fuel, but it isn't designed to lug around the dropship as well. So you can see we just rocket past the Hades there. We just left the burn too late, and we can't catch up with the drive stage of the Karen. So instead what I do is I switch to the Hades and do this rendezvous the other way around, because the Hades has plenty of fuel on account of the drop tanks there. I think when we drop these tanks, we eke out like another 800 to 1,000 meters per second of delta V. So yeah, it was much more sensible to rendezvous the Hades to the Karen ship rather than the other way around. So that's just what we're doing now, and that goes pretty much without a hitch. Now, originally, I was supposed to dock the two together, but when I started using my RCS on the Karen ship, I was like, this is going to take a really long time, and frankly, I was just really eager to get down to the surface, and also we haven't actually collected an EVA report from space around Eve, so I thought we might as well get the astronauts out and they'll just fly over. So, I mentioned this in an earlier episode, but the astronauts destined for the surface are Dodo Kerman, Magdan Kerman, and of course Valentina Kerman, who will be flying our propeller plane through the thick clouds of Eve. I'm very excited to get that, but we'll catch up with that in the next episode. For now, it's important to actually get the astronauts down on the surface. Now, I didn't feel right just having the three Kerbals to the surface get in the Karen and then just leave it there when they head down to the surface, so I also send over Seapond Kerman, our orbital pilot, who will, see the three Kerbals off on their journey, and then he'll bring the Karen back, and we'll have that rendezvous with the Hades, just so it's all together in one place. And also, I think I will get a contract payment for building a station round Eve, something like that. There we are, the brave Kerbonauts peering out the window and waving goodbye to the Hades, which they won't see for quite a few months, because we really want to make the most out of our trip to hell. So now we're just lowering our orbit to be as close to the top of the atmosphere as possible, because the higher we are, the faster we'll come in, and the more likely it is that we'll kill our Kerbals before they ever get to the surface. We're going to try and aim to be as close to the base as possible, but luckily it's not too important if we get that close, because we have the rover tucked away in that huge fairing, so they can just drive over when they get down. But anyway, here we are, the big moments here. Valentina, Magdan and Dodo get into the drop capsule and get ready for departure. And there we are, we've successfully landed 3 kerbals on the surface of Eve, which to be fair is the easy part. The hard part is getting them back again, but that is a problem for a few months' time. For now, our main problem is trying to get the rover out from this drop assembly here. I get caught on the base plate of the fairing, and the wheels just did not want to drive off for some reason, and I was there tweaking a lot of settings and eventually just wiggled my way off. I think I upped the traction as well, which I probably should have done to begin with, but yeah, eventually I wiggled my way off the plate, and we're ready to head over to Asphodel. Before I set off, I just did a few checks on the life support, and I got a bit of a worrying display. I saw that it said we only had, like a day of oxygen, and I was like, oh my god, have I forgotten to pack oxygen on this thing, because that's going to be really bad. No, for some reason, the life support mod was just having a bit of a nightmare with it. I eventually time warp to the daytime, and that seems to just fix the issue. I don't really know what was going on, but yeah, it's fine, because we have plenty of oxygen, we have plenty of nitrogen, and plenty of hydrogen for the fuel tanks as well, so yeah, I don't know what was happening there. But anyway, we depart for Asphodel under a beautiful green sunrise. There's something really eerie and hellish about sunrise on Eve with the visual mods, and I love it. Now, since I've last been on the surface of Eve with the Orpheus probes, I've updated the parallax mod to the newest version, and there was an option in it for a lifeless Eve, and I opted to go for that one because as much as I kind of enjoyed the whimsical bubbles that were floating all over the surface and the plant life that was also there, I did also think, Eve is a hellscape. It shouldn't have life on it. It shouldn't have these like nice little bubbles. I wanted hell. I wanted to put my kerbals on the surface of hell and then get them back again. It just feels a bit more realistic. But anyway, we used the Bon Voyage mod to cut out all of the journey, so I didn't have to do it myself. You saw I had to tweak a few settings. I actually switched off all but 2 of the wheels just so that I could actually have the power to drive all the way over. But it did work in the end, luckily. We didn't have to drive it by hand, because that would have probably taken a very long time. But yeah, here we are. We've arrived at Asphodel, and it's time for... who are we sending out here? Magdan Kerman to be the first kerbal to set foot on Eve. And with the important flag planting and posing duties out the way, it's time to get everyone in their rooms. I've also updated the Kerbalism mod, which in part, as well as doing all the life support stuff, has a bunch of scientific experiment tweaks that it makes. Before the update, I had configured all of the experiments for this base, and since updating it, all of those configurations have been reset, so we're actually going to be missing out on quite a bit of science here, which is a little bit annoying, but we still have quite a lot. So yeah, we're just running the experiments, which should keep them occupied while we send over the submarine and the plane. I know Valentina will be very excited for that, but that'll all be in the next episode, because that's all I've got time for today. Thank you very much for not only watching, for your patience if you have been watching the series. I know it's been about 2 or 3 months since the last episode. Hopefully I will be a bit more consistently uploading now that I'm back and I don't have quite as busy a schedule. But anyway, if you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a like and maybe subscribing to the channel. And if you want to catch up with the older episodes of Beyond Horizons, you can check out the playlist that this video's in. But I've been Moonfish1001, and I'll see you in the next video.